afternoon everyone, and welcome back to Thirsty Thursday. I'm Claire, the artist and designer for Thirsty Brush and a guest presenter on Create and Craft. So today's show is going to be pure demos for you. The last couple of weeks since we launched our brand new luminosity range, which is our heat embossing powders and inks, we've been showing you loads of different ways to use them, and today is going to be exactly the same, and we're going to combine them with some other techniques like watercolours and die cutting. So thank you again to Tony for letting me use her studio. It's great to be back here, and hopefully with Christmas next week everybody's getting ready now, so I'm not going to do Christmas cards this week. I'm going to do something new. So while I get ready for the first demo, take a look at what happened last week. So welcome back. I hope you've been enjoying all the demonstrations on the luminosity powders, and if you've got them and you've been trying them, I'd love to hear your comments, so do feel free to pop some comments on the YouTube or share them with me, your mates with me on our Facebook group, which is the Brushettes. So let's get on with our first demo. We're going to use this rosemary and thyme stamp and die set, but I'm just going to use the die set to show you how we can use these die cuts with our embossing powders in a different way. So I'll get rid of the stamp set for now, and I'm just using the large leaf, which is this one here, that normally cuts round the basil stamp, but I'm going to use it blank as it is to create some die cuts that are going to be used like as a topper. So if I pop that on a piece of card and through the die cutting machine, I'm just going to show you once, but I've actually cut this out 3 or 4 times, and you'll see why shortly. So just on some white card, but you could do it on a black, navy, grey, something like that, with the colours that we're going to do would work perfectly. And we're going to use, just while that's going through, we're going to use the rosy gold, which is that lovely kind of sheer pink with a slight metallic in, to colour these leaves up. And of course our luminosity ink pad. So that's one lot of leaves. Let me show you the other ones that I've done. So I've got a couple of full ones to decide how I'm going to lay them out, and then I've cut a couple more and kind of snipped into them, so I've got different kind of shaped leaves. And then to get some embossing powder on them, we're not going to use the pen or stamps or anything like that. We're just going to put these die cuts onto the pad. So if you take your lid off your embossing pad and face down, I mean these are cut in white so it doesn't particularly matter, press your die cut onto the spongy pad. You can do the stalk bit as well if you want, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to keep a little bit off so I can hold it. You could use tweezers to hold this as well, particularly when you're heat setting. You don't want to burn your fingers. And then over some paper to catch the excess, I've added that lovely rosy gold powder, and then I'll heat set. Just put my excess away. And as always, when you're using embossing powders, just let your gun heat up a little bit first. And then as we bring it in, there we go, you can see that lovely change, and it changes to that beautiful luminous shine of the powder. Which is really, really pretty. It made that die cut extra special. So let's repeat the process for the other leaves. So I've got a few more than I thought actually there. So this slightly larger one. This time I'm going to do a couple at a time. Now you know the process for it. And let's have that full one. So it's up to you how many you do. You'll see when the arrangement is done, you can make it as big or small as you like. Let's do one more. I may or may not use it, but you can always do a load and put them up as embellishments for other projects if you want. The more even you press down on the ink pad, the smoother finish you will get with your powder. If you want it to look a little bit more rustic with gaps and things like that and not covering everywhere, then don't press it as hard and leave little areas out. See, like these edges here. Just going to put the ones aside that I do, and then we'll heat set them all together. Embossing ink is really good because it doesn't dry quickly, so it gives you plenty of time to do more than one thing, more than one die cut or more than one stamping item at a time. Okay, let's heat set those. I'll bring them back in and then you can see the camera doing it again. See that changing? So you don't need to keep the heat on long. Just as soon as you see that shine change. What might be really nice actually is if you, quite hot actually, after, you could double heat emboss them. So you could put a clear over the top, or you could put a bit of gold, you could add some detail with your pen. So you could do layers of different embossing if you want, and then that will make your die cuts as well really, really substantial and a lot stiffer. So if you're using them for a home decor project, for example, it's really good for that. I like these little areas of white. I think that looks really cool. Oops. Okay, so I've got 4 different ones. Just clean up this workspace a little because it's got powder blown over it. So there we go, those are our 4 pieces. And we're going to arrange them on the card in a little while in different ways. But let's put our card base together. So I've got quite a large card here, and then I'm going to make the leaves the focus. So I've got a 10 by 7 with a black matte layer and some lovely of Tony's rosy gold coloured glitter card. So I thought it went quite nice. And then to give it a bit of dimension, instead of foam pads, because it's such a large area, I've used some fun foam that I'm going to stick down with some tape. So let's pop that to the black bit first. Just adding these layers just gives, especially a large card, will give it stability, add a bit of dimension and give it a really expensive look. So the fun foam, I don't like to use, as I mentioned before, wet glue with fun foam because it tends to soak in and then warp the foam and therefore your card when you mount it on. So I tend to just do 3 strips of double-sided tape on either side. Is everybody ready for Christmas now? So it's only next Wednesday, isn't it? So less than a week to go. So yeah, I thought you'd be sick of Christmas cards by now. I thought we'd do something almost a bit spring-like, get in the mood for the nicer weather. Oh, yes, that's right. I was thinking I'd just put my white card on there then. So this is our matte layer. So this part of the double-sided tape you can pop onto the foam or the card, doesn't really matter. So do comment, let me know what you're up to as well over Christmas. Have you got any crafty time? Time for yourself, time for the family? All do nice things together. We'll be having Christmas dinner together all as a family. So I hope you guys are seeing people you love too over the Christmas period and staying warm and dry. So that's our card base. And then I want to make a little bit of a background on this white piece of card to then make a feature for the leaves. So I'm just going to do some very, very simple splatters with some watercolour. So I'm going to use like a pinky colour. Pinky kind of corally colour that I thought would go nice with the rosy gold powder and the rose gold glitter card. So just a medium sized watercolour brush. I think this is a 10. Oh, that one's not doing much. Let's try this. I think that one had gone a bit hard. And I want the splatters to kind of be in the middle coming out. Let's do a slightly darker colour as well to mix in. So mainly concentrated in the middle with some coming out, just to bring the card together when we make the leaves on. So let's dry that off so we can pop it on the card. Just again with your heat gun. When you're drying things like this, you can, we always say don't waft the heat tool around when you're using embossing powders. But when you're just drying off a bit of watercolour, it doesn't matter so much. If you do get a bit of warp in your card, like I have there, most of the time you can turn it over and it'll spring back the other way. So it's pretty flat now. So to mount that onto our card, because we're going on to glitter, like Tony does as well, we both do the same. We use tape and wet glue, because sometimes it just needs a bit of extra grab. So I've got some pin flare glue as well. So the only actual bit of stamping in this card is the sentiment that I've done, which I'll show you. But other than that, it's actually quite a... If you're still developing your stamping skills and you want an effective card to do without any colouring in and things like that while you're learning, this is a good one to do. Okay, so we've got a background. So just to decide how we want to arrange the leaves, and like I said, I did a stamped sentiment from the Hello You set, All About You set, and the leaves, just as a reminder, were from the Rosemary and Basil die set. So trying to think how I want some flat and then some with foam pads, I think. Wonder if I put that one, maybe the larger one at the front, something like that. Okay, so the back two layers I'll do with wet glue. Running out of this one. There's loads of different wet glues out there. My favourite's pin flare, but use whatever you've got in your stash. And one of these over this side, and then these two, yeah, let's put those, some little foam pads on those. See if I've got some small ones. So the larger of the leaves, I'll just use these medium-y sized ones and cut them down, but then I've got some really little ones for the smaller areas. So this is a good size card, this 10 by 7, although you could scale it down if you haven't got any 10 by 7 card blanks. But I like doing these kind of cards for either a really special occasion, or they're really good if somebody asks you to do a card where lots of people have got to sign it, say a leaving, or you've bought a joint present together or something and you need... Let's do that one. Yeah, and you need something larger to hold everybody's names when they're signing inside. Nice pretty colours, nice soft. That glitter card goes really well, doesn't it, with the rosy gold powder. A few people mentioned on the very first show we did when we launched the powders that they'd never tried heat embossing before, or they'd kind of fell out of love with it a bit and they wanted to get back into it. So I hope these last few weeks, these shows have been inspiring you. And again, I'd love to see what you're out there making too. So just a final touch then, let's pop the sentiment there. So a kind of clean and simple meets artsy, nice large card. There we go. So let's see if we can get, that's it. See the shine on those leaves is really lovely. And like I say, that would work just as nicely. Maybe even with the clear embossing powder over some pattern papers. If you cut your leaves out in some of your pattern papers, thirsty brush ones or whichever you've got. Fabulous. Let's go on to the next demonstration. So a bit of stamping for this one, and I haven't done a watercolouring demonstration for ages, so I'm going to use the vintage floral spray, which is this lovely huge rose stamp here, and I think I'll use one of these larger sentiments, but you do get a really nice kind of verse one in there as well. I'll just read that out. Sometimes it's nice to look back on times and things gone by. We feel a great nostalgia welling right up inside. So this card I send are flowers from the past to remind us of years gone by, which I thought went perfect with the vintage style of the flowers. Here's another little quick video for you just while I get that prepped. Okay, great, I've got the Eureka here. So I'm going to stamp slightly off the page with this rose. So I want it to kind of come in on the card. Do I want it at an angle or? No, let's do it straight. I kind of want it there, I think. So yeah, just when you position your card on your mat, just make sure you've got plenty of room when you're using a large stamp. And it can look a little bit difficult when you see this stamp because it's so sketchy to see how it will look. So I thought if I stamp it out, and then I'm going to use the black embossing powder, the luminosity powder. So before you use stamping with embossing powders, use your anti-static bag. This will stop any powder sticking where you don't want it. Which is particularly important when you're using like a black powder on a white card or a light powder on a dark card, because otherwise it could be quite noticeable. If you want a clean and crisp look, sometimes if you don't mind those extra little bits and you want that as part of its appeal, then go for it. So that's the clear embossing luminosity ink. Just get rid of that out of the way. And we want a piece of paper, that's it, to catch the powder again. Normally just use a piece of old copy paper for this, just to catch your excess powder so you can easily pop it back into the pot. So yeah, this is maybe somewhere where I would have ordinarily just stamped in black ink, say VersaFine if I was doing watercolouring, or Memento if I was doing alcohol markers like Tony's Gossip. However, I thought if you use embossing powder, it just adds that extra little bit of dimension when you give your card, because it's raised, it looks a little bit more expensive, and it's a really good way of resist as well if you're not confident with your colouring. So just to heat set that. Same as before, let your heat gun tool warm up a little bit. You won't see much change on the camera here because it's so fine, but in real life you'll see all the detail come up really shiny. And when it's so fine like this, it doesn't take long to set either. You hold it towards the light though, you'll always tell if you've missed a bit because it will be dull where it hasn't heat set yet. I think that's it. Lovely. So let's add some colour. So I'm going to use watercolouring technique you may have seen from me before. If not, feel free to give this one a go at home. You need some water-based pens. I use the Zigs, but whichever ones you've got to hand. A water brush and some water, which is not very clear there, but never mind. So I'm going to do this rose here in the middle in kind of some oranges and yellows. So a little bit of colour at the base of the petals. Just do one or two to start off. And then with a damp brush, I'm not going all over the colour, I'm just pulling out a little bit of colour. Oh, thank you. My glamorous assistant got me some nice clean water. Thank you very much. Add in a bit more of the lighter yellows as well, if you want a little bit of extra tone. This is going to give you a kind of look as if you've hand painted this. It's resisting all over that embossing powder, but you haven't had to take any art lessons for this. So that's a couple of petals, sorry. Let's go in with a bit more. If you just follow round where the petals are and do colour at the base of each. You can then use that colour to pull up with your brush. This seems to be everybody's favourite technique with the water brushes. You can do the same kind of thing with paints if you've got like a palette like we used for the previous one for the splatters, but it's just a little harder to get the shading and definition, so don't be too hard on yourself if you're doing it with paints, because it does take a little long to master, which I think is why brush pens like these are so popular. If you want to add a bit of extra definition, you can go back in and add a darker shade, maybe on some of the lines that I've done for you. And just keep going and blending until you're happy with how those petals look. Just a very light touch. Don't need to be heavy-handed with this at all. Okay, let's go in with some greens for the leaves, and I'm going to use a couple of different shades just to give a bit of depth. So on this leaf here, same again at the base of the leaf. In fact, I tend to turn my work round so I haven't got my hand in any wet areas, and just use that brush to ease out that colour, and it will start to bleed all by itself. Let's try another green for this type of leaf here. So another one of those. Looking for the same types of leaves. No, they're probably all this one. Oh. Really easy. And don't worry about leaving whiter areas near the edge of your leaves, because it kind of adds to that loose watercolour look that everybody seems to want to achieve. As you go round each petal and each leaf, it all starts to come together. There's a little bud here I'm just going to come back to shortly. So to come back to this bud, I'm going to use this other green just to kind of balance that out from the other side on the leaves of the bud. And then again, some of that lovely yellow. Don't make your brush too wet. I always wipe mine on the side of my cup like that. If you make it too wet to start off with, you'll flood it, and then everything starts to bleed a bit too much. You can always add more water, but it's difficult to take it off. You can blot, and watercolours do fade down, so you can blot it off. It's not the end of the world, but it's nice to, and it's easier if you start off with a little, and you can always add more. So this greeny yellow is just doing these little kind of spray elements here, and on their little stalks, just coming out. Lovely. So to finish that off and just give it a bit of depth before it gets mounted onto a card, because I know I'm doing a clean and simple look, but I feel like it needs something else. I'm going to, let's grab some, I've got an ink. Looking for something grey. I haven't got my grey pen with me, so let's try some ink with it and see if that will come up. If I get my Eureka, but I only need a corner. Just going to use this corner almost like a little palette. Might not be dark enough, that. See if we've got a darker colour. No, let's go with that one, see how it comes up. All we're looking to do is kind of ground this flower a little bit. So if you add a little bit of water, almost turns into a watercolour paint. So it's not dark, but it doesn't really need to be. And I'm just going to kind of go around the flower a little bit, a couple of the lines, a bit more plain water, and just blend that out to get rid of that line there. And as it dries back, it will start to almost look as if it's just grounded a little bit, and maybe that's the sky background. You could even do some blue behind. Again, very, very light. Don't worry if you leave some white areas. And when you're using this much water, make sure you have a good quality cardstock that you're using. You could use Tony's watercolour one, or if you want something smooth, like a smooth stamping card that's say 300 GSM, something like that, would be perfect. Okay. Just gives it that little bit of an edge, just so it's not like a sticker stuck on. Lovely. So if we make that onto our card now and pop a sentiment on, really simple card, but really focusing on your watercolour painting. Just dry it off quickly. Not using even any foam pads on this one. Oh, hang on, I haven't put my sentiment on, have I, before I do that? So just the thinking of you. Let's just do that in black. Not even using my Eureka here, it's just a little sentiment, so I'll pop it on with a acrylic block. There we go. Sometimes the simple ones are just as effective as your cards that you bling up loads, so don't be afraid of white space. And it really, when you've spent the time doing some watercolouring or some really nice colouring with your pens, for example, then it really kind of shows that off if you don't cover it in loads of other stuff as well. There we go, really nice and simple. So if I just pop the two, shall I, together. So you've got two completely different cards there, completely different techniques, but both using embossing powders. So you've got your embossed die cuts here. Like I say, try this with clear as well, and maybe your pattern papers would be really cool if you've got these leaf dies or something similar in your stash. You don't have to have these exact products. Have a mooch and see what you've got. And then the second card here, we just heat emboss the stamp as an alternative to just using your Versamark for watercolours, and then use some watercolour pens and inks just to give it some colour and keep it really clean and simple. So I hope those techniques were useful to you and you enjoyed those demonstrations. Have an absolutely fabulous Christmas, everybody, and I will see you very, very soon.